All right. So I am super, super excited about this one. Cowboy Jack and Kevin have an awesome segment called Hazy History. Guys, do you want to explain a little bit what Hazy History is?
Absolutely. So what we do on Hazy History is we find an obscure event that happened in baseball. We've talked about Tommy Lasorda fighting mascots. We've talked about Ty Cobb fighting fans. What we'll do, and we'll just do a quick deep dive on it. We'll go about half an hour deep dive, so not too crazy, but we're going to highlight these crazy, weird, hazy histories of baseball.
And we actually did this topic before a year or so ago. We were doing a shorter version on Instagram, and this is one that now we have a longer format. We dug deeper, and oh my goodness, we missed a lot of the story here.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Right. So where do you start?
Well, let's take a look at our man here. Jack, why don't you give us the title that you
Well, tonight's episode of Hazy History is Len Koenecke and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day.
All right, so we're going to be talking about Leonard George Koenecke. I make sure we get this right here. Who was known as Len, was born January 18th, 1904. Yes, we're going back to the early 1900s, the peak of my life. So I got this one. Don't worry. He was born in Baraboo, Wisconsin. We're going to wait to hear some of these cities we're talking about.
It's a real place, dude.
And I was just like, all right, well, what's by there? It's 40 miles from the state's capital, Madison, if anybody even knows where Madison, Wisconsin is. Parabellum is maybe no Milwaukee. It's probably the only city he probably would know if he's watching here. His parents were Lydia and Herman. We mentioned Herman because Herman was a railroad engineer for the Chicago and Northwest Railway, which you'll see why I mentioned that later. So he just grew up a normal life. He graduated from high school in 1924 in Friendship, Wisconsin.
Wow.
So we know that's these names. So after high school, he then began his working life as a fireman. So, Michael, what do you got? Michael, is that what you think I meant? Is that what you really thought I meant?
Is it not a fireman?
Well, you know,
he's got a point, dude.
You're right. Thank you, Michael. But I mean a fireman on a locomotive. All right, hold on. Go back. We'll go there. I'll go there in a minute. Because I want to. You know what? Let's just go on this side tangent here because let's ignore our firefighters over here. We know what those guys are, but that thing on the left. Let's talk about that a little bit. That is an award called the Rolaids Relief Man Award. All right. So because the first closers were nicknamed firemen, a reference to putting out the fire of another team's rally. As you can see here, the trophy was a gold-plated firefighter's helmet in a stroke of genius there. And Michael, I have a question for you. How do you spell relief?
Rolaids.
That's right. So this award got created, the Rolaids Relief Man Award. It was around from 1976 to 2012, and it went to the top relievers of each league. Now, here's the weird part, Jack. I've never seen an award like this. The winners are determined by the players' stats instead of the lousy writers voting for winners like other awards. You know?
Love it.
So if you get a save, you get 3 points. Each win is worth 2 points, and if you get a loss, you get -2 points. All right? Following along here? I love, too, that later as the game evolved, they made additions to the scoring criteria, like -2 points for a blown save, or you get an additional point for a tough save, which would be when a relief pitcher got the save after entering the game with the potential tying run on base. So the player with the highest total at the end of the year. All right, there you go. Good job, Parabellum. Home of the Madison
Mallards.
Mallards. Thank you. That's an independent team now, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So like I said, the player with the highest point total wins the award. Several Hall of Famers have won this award. Let me give you a few names here. Mario Rivera, the late, great Bruce Sutter, rest in power, Goose Gossage, and, hey, friend of the show, Wally Fingers. All right?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, the corporate world then ruined things yet again, as this award was canceled in 2013 after a French pharmaceutical company called Sanofi, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. They bought Rolaids from a company called McNeil Consumer Healthcare, which is part of the Johnson & Johnson's umbrella. And Sanofi is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, primarily known for vaccines, but also makes prescription and over-the-counter medications. So yeah, we can blame the French for ruining this for us baseball fans.
But we digress.
All right, of course, it's Hazy.
Now, Kevin, since you were a young man during the time that locomotives were invented, can you please explain to us how a fireman is in the railroad? How does that work together?
You're really going there?
I am. Pull out the diary, kid.
Yeah. I was gonna do like I'm gonna follow something else now. Like, wait, let me. All right,
we got props. Dude.
Yeah, we don't need props. All right, can you go to the next photo, please, Michael? So this is a fireman in the form of being on a locomotive. So what Len's got hired to do is, as a strong young man out of high school, he got hired to work for his father's employer. That's why I mentioned the Chicago Northwestern Railway. He was a fireman, not a pitcher from the bullpen, who knew how to spell relief.
ROL, AIDS.
Thank you. He would do what's called tending the fire for powering a steam engine for a locomotive. And a lot of that job is hard physical labor, such as they're seeing here, shoveling fuel. And in this case, on the steam engine locomotive, it would be typically coal. Into that is the boiler's firebox. So the fire would already be started. He wouldn't start it because the process takes several hours for it to happen. They have a guy who's like a fire starter or something like that. I want to say that so you can make your Prodigy or Drew Barrymore joke. Just talk amongst yourselves here. But the point is that if you see what he's doing, it's a lot of just, shovel, boom, shovel, boom. So through Len's work as a fireman, stoking the locomotive engines and other labors of his work made him jacked, especially his upper torso and Cowboy Jack Durango. I know a good upper torso. You know what I mean?
That's true, dude. Best chest in the West.
That's right. He built himself up to be a 5'11", 180 pounds. And I'm sure it was just all here. You know what I mean? That's probably about 160 pounds is just right here. So now let's tie that all back into baseball. And this is where it gets hazy, Michael Mondragon. Because there was a source we found that covers Adams County is the area, I believe, in Wisconsin, that said that Len was the standout baseball player growing up. Said he played ball at school and while still in high school played second base for the Adams Village team along with his brother Herb. He grew to love the game and made an effort to play baseball professionally as soon as he could. Excuse me, but you know what? I found something that completely contradicts that. That's what makes it fun here. All right? So a source that we use often here that we really love is called SABRE. It's a Society for American Baseball Research. They had an unidentified source that said he played little ball in high school. And so, the joy of hazy history. But going off of what we're going to talk about here, what SABRE says really more adds up to his playing ability on the field, as you'll see as we go here. All right. So his start in baseball, actually playing outside of, allegedly high school, happened through knowing a railway brakeman and former minor leaguer named Murray Boyle. That does not sound like a real name, Cowboy Jack. That sounds like an alias.
It's a gimmick name.
He just knows a guy.
Yeah, that's his working name.
Speaking of working, listen to this town. Boyle managed the town baseball club in Escanaba, Michigan.
Wow.
Come on.
It's a real place, dude. Escanaba.
Escanaba. And it was a stop on the Chicago Northwestern line. So there was a game where Boyle was short of players and knew that Len was jacked. So he asked him to substitute and gave him a catcher's mitt. And so, using his physique, he's got that. So he was a natural hitter and made progress immediately. He was inexperienced, so didn't have much else to offer baseball-wise at that point. But he was good enough to where he took a leave of absence for his railroad job, and then he spent the rest of the summer playing baseball for Escanaba and other local teams. Then when the season ended, he returned to working for the railroad. But the following season, he was at it again. So he resumed playing ball, joining town and semi-pro teams in both Michigan and Wisconsin. So then he finally became a pro the next year. We're talking 1927, Michael Mondragon.
Okay.
I was a mere Jack,
427 years old.
Give or take 200 years on that, and you'll be close. Anyway, so he actually did sign as a catcher with the Springfield Senators in Illinois, Jack.
Not the Isotopes.
Isotopes. Oh, good job. I'm glad you know that. Of a Class B league. I don't even want to try to go down the well to explain it. It's not how it is now where it's A, then your next level is AA, AAA, the major leagues. I think Class B is, I think it's AA and then B, C, and D,
wow.
I think.
Wow.
So you're going to get confused like I am already just talking about this. So Len was, quote, showed plenty of power at the plate, but had a shaky arm and a woeful laugh experience. That's why I'm saying in playing high school does not add up to this. And then Springfield ended up releasing him. He ended up playing with, and this is a real team apparently, the Moline Plowboys. So when Plowboy Jack Durango comes around, he can play for the Moline Plowboys.
Plowboy Jack Durango, dude.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is the next. This is 2 levels down. It says the Class D Mississippi Valley League. I just love just talking about these random leagues and teams. Oh, you're welcome, son. I can't believe I just thanked you for. I believe I just acknowledged you. His strength was still his hitting, batting 343 with a league-leading 20 home runs. And back then, a lot of home runs weren't being hit unless you're a Babe Ruth, pretty much. So again, in the offseason, he's stoking those locomotive engines. Len went back to Moline and led the league again in batting average. So we're talking 1928 now. He led the league in batting average, hits, and home runs, and he got promoted to the Indianapolis Indians. Michael, I think you have a photo of him in that jersey for me.
I do.
All right. So we're going to, because this is going to be a recurring theme here if we're talking about the Indianapolis Indians. So this is the AA American Association, which that used to be a AAA league. And now I believe it's an independent league somewhere in like the Midwest. It's hard to keep track of this. So after he was done, Moline, he got bumped up to Indianapolis. So he's actually one step away from the major leagues all of a sudden. So he did well. And in 17 late season games, he batted 394, showing that he's got that major league material, Jack.
Yes.
And then the next year, so we're talking 1929 now. I want to make sure we're given the order of things here. So something happened here that would become a pattern for Len because he's spending the off season, just working in that little space, doing all that shoveling and stuff. He got up a little slowly. And, he's jacked to the gills, but he's unable to get limber in the early going. If you're just moving your arms, not moving your legs,
Right.
You're going to be like me where you just, you got the legs.
barrel chested, dude.
That's
barrel
right.
chested, just
Exactly.
like Kevin Lyon.
Exactly. So he didn't start off very well at all. So because of that, Indianapolis sent him off to a 3I league club called the Quincy Indians. And no, Michael, this city in Illinois is not named for Jack Klugman. Damn. All right.
Now, so it's the 3I League, and they sometimes refer to it as the 3I League. It's the Illinois, Indiana, and Iowa League, played from 1901 to 1961, with some interruptions due to world events.
World events, huh?
Wow.
So what? 2 world wars. I don't know, the Spanish flu. Am I forgetting anything, Cowboy Jack? Nothing else happened in those 60 years. It's a blip on my radar. Yeah, this is.
Yes.
So, like I said, it took him a while to get back on track. And Jack, I don't mean a railroad track. But,
Tip your waitress, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Try the veal. But after 110 games, his batting average, he was back and jacked and hitting it hard, batting 325, 44 extra base hits. So he got sent back up to Indianapolis. Now you go back to the Indianapolis side again because this is going to be a recurring theme too. And there he played 32 games, about 316. So doing solid. But again, he needed to make some money that offseason, so he went back to working at the railroad job. And then now we're going to move on to 1930, which is a big year, Cowboy Jack, in this man's life because he got married in 1930. And Jack, they may have had a daughter then.
They either had the daughter in 1930 or in 1932. Yeah. So
that's how hazy this is.
Right.
That's why
there's 12 different accounts, but it's either when she's born or 2 years before she's born.
It's so weird.
Big year,
so
dude.
Weird.
She's there. Anna, she's there in some form.
Yeah, her name's Anna. I don't know if she's still alive. If she is, did not rest in power, Anna. But she's either born in 1930 or 1932. We don't know for sure. As funny as that is. But for 1930, for some reason, maybe if everything else going on, Len's wife was maybe having a daughter and maybe not. He doesn't know. We don't know what's going on. He'd end up not doing as well, and he ended up getting sent back to Springfield again, Jack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But
back to the isotopes.
Yep. Okay, fine. I'll just say it is. And then again, but he did well there. 349 in 56 games. And then guess where he went up to again? Indianapolis. You see the pattern here. And and again, he didn't do very well in that's that run. 67 games, about 250. So the man's at a crossroads in his life, literally about to find out. So his father, was working that railroad company for years. So Len was able to get away with taking all these leaves to play baseball, be gone for months at a time. So, however, after 1930, Len was told, brother, you either pick ball or you pick the railroad. What's it going to be? And guess what he chose, Michael Mondragon?
The circus. I mean,
baseball. You're right. Baseball. You're right.
Yes.
You're right.
The
Absolutely.
circus.
Same. All right. So let's now talk about 1931. He had just baseball in his mind, and he just killed it that year with Indianapolis. To the point where New York Giants manager Little Napoleon John McGraw was aware of what Leo was doing and was interested in bringing him up. Let's take a look at Mr. John McGraw here. You have a photo of him ready for you? Oh wow! Oh geez, look at him. Oh gosh, I think he's judging all of us for talking.
Yes.
So let me explain why the interest here. So McGraw was manager of the New York Giants, and they hadn't made the playoffs in years, so he was looking to shake things up, brother. But the Giants scouts were saying back mixed reports. We had a scout who said, quote, the big fast Koenecke has the pick of the outfielders in the minor league this year, while another one branded him a terrible outfielder who would probably be unable to replicate his gaudy minor league batting stats against major league pitching. So, intrigued, but unsure, Jack. McGraw decided to inspect the prospect himself, temporarily leaving the Giants and taking the train, ironically enough, to Indianapolis in early August. There's more irony in me saying that train joke later. So think about that. Can you imagine a manager leaving his team to go scout a minor leaguer? That tells you. And I would think New York to Indianapolis is not a quick train ride either. That's got to be a day or so, at least. So McGraw went to watch a few games in Indianapolis, and he decided, yep, I need this kid. This kid is already 1904. He's already 25, 26 years old, so nowadays, you'd be already veteran by that point, potentially. All right, so he offered the Indians club owner, N.A. Perry, you ready for this? $75,000 for Koenecke's contracts rights in 1931 money. Yeah, that's perfect right there. Like that.
Agreed.
Very good. Now, did you hear that? 1931 money, $75,000. So, Jack, what is that in today's money?
Approximately $1,444,021.38 today.
Nice.
That's crazy. Now, let me tell you why that's even crazier. So, Perry was willing to part with Koenecke, but weirdly considering the United States was, I don't know, in a depression.
Yes.
He actually wanted players rather than cash in exchange for him, which just puzzles me to no end because, we're 4 years we're several years in the middle of the depression here. And so in the end, they decided to do players. I didn't even say how many players. It literally said some players and $10,000 in cash to get Len. So it's different. It's not a direct affiliation like it is now at the major leagues. They actually have to get these guys and buy them from the minor league team. So there we go. Boom. Got him. So Koenecke was going to go to report to the Giants West Coast camp in the spring of 1932. So it's not spring training. You go to the West Coast and just get yourself ready. So McGraw predicted that Koenecke, quote, will be a bright star in the National League, quote unquote. McGraw's confidence in him spurred apparently uncharacteristic bravado from apparently the normally modest Midwesterner. Quote, I ought to make good, Koenecke declared upon reaching Los Angeles in February. I hit 353 in the American Association and had plenty of triples. None of these cheap home runs for me, quote unquote. So early on, he then backed those words up. So let me see here. He heavy hitting in early exhibition games. It got to the point that the Giants actually traded their outfield starter, a guy by the name of Fred Leach, to Boston. I don't know if that'd be the Boston Bean Eaters, the Boston Braves, the Boston Red Sox. But, So it opened up the left field post for Koenecke. And unfortunately, he didn't hit as well as he did in the minor leagues. And his weakness of fielding. Oh, hold on. You're jumping ahead of yourself here. You can keep it on Mr. McGraw for me. We'll get to that guy in a second. Shh, don't say who that is, Cowboy Jack. It got to the point where in early June, to make things worse for him, is that John McGraw suddenly had to resign as manager of the Giants because look at him. He's a very, very young and healthy man there. But he actually was really ailing health-wise, and he ended up suddenly just quitting the team. And their first baseman, a guy named Bill Terry, who I believe is a Hall of Famer as well, became the manager, still player manager, and he was not a fan of Len's play. And immediately Len was playing less with the Giants. And also, apparently, the Giants were known for being a brotherhood, Cowboy Jack Durango, how do I say it like that, type group. And he apparently was considered a quiet outsider, which led to some heat in the clubhouse. So after one game in June 9th, Len went 0 for 4 in a game against St. Louis. After that, Bill sent him out, kicked him off the team, and sent him to the Jersey City Skeeters of the AA International League. Jack, what is a skeeter?
It's a mosquito, babe. It's a mosquito.
It's a mosquito. It's literally a mosquito.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so Len did. Hey, but you know what? Len came back. There seems to be a pattern. He'll get demoted, do one to come back. He actually made back to the Giants for the end of the end of the season 32, but didn't do well enough again. And literally, the Giants sold him to the Buffalo Bisons in the International League. There you go. So $10,000 in players traded, gone down the drain from the Giants' budget, just like that. That's a loss right there.
Jeez.
Yeah. But then guess what happened? He had another great minor league season. Woo, of course he did. So in 1933, he made the International League All-Star team. That's how well he did. He also was making some strides defensively. And the one thing we talked about, because he was he's working half the time and doing all this. He had a late start to baseball, but he had the tools. He had athleticism, he had foot speed, and an adequate throwing arm for competent outfield play. And he finally was able to show up truly with the Bisons. And the Dodgers were paying attention. Just watched him. And they decided they're going to buy his contract. And he was supposed to report after the Buffalo season ended. But here's the kicker, Cowboy Jack. Buffalo made what was apparently called the Junior World Series back then.
The Junior World Series.
The Junior World Series. And I'm guessing this would have just been the whatever I call it, the AA, which, it's just so confusing trying to figure out these leagues. The top minor league level. And they lost to Columbus, which I would hope is the Columbus Clippers. Let's just say it's Columbus Clippers. That's a famous AAA team, right? In eight late September games. So it's a best of 9, too. Make it even crazier. And by that point, when he was done, the Dodgers season was already over. So he didn't get a chance to play in the major leagues in 33. All right. So now let's jump to 1934. Brooklyn was like, we're going to give you a shot, brother. And there was a guy, you can go to the next photo here. We're talking about a young guy here. That is Casey Stengel. That's about as young as you'll ever see him look. He always looked at least 40. So he was the manager. And this was actually Casey's rookie year as a manager. Believe it or not, he was actually a rookie once. So Casey actually took personal interest in Len and worked with him on his fielding. And apparently, it was considered very rare later on for Casey to be known to invest much time in a single player. But hey, you know what? This is a young, for lack of a better term, young in the field of managing. How about I say it like that? He was young and trying to make an impression and you want to make that good first impression. And it definitely worked out as Len just thrived. He actually set a National League record for fielding as an outfielder. And he only made 2 errors in the entire season, which that's pretty stellar. And at the plate, 320 batting average, 14 home runs, 73 RBIs. Dodgers, though, not good, 71 and 81. But the New York Times was very excited about him. They said that Len was the new Flatbush hero, Cowboy Jack Durango.
What a name.
Do we know who was the first Flatbush hero?
We don't. It's you are. That's right. It was you.
Don't let the hazy truth get in the way of a good story, right? All right, or the hazy fiction, But what we're saying is all apparently true in some ways, I'm sure. So it's interesting too, because what we're going to talk about later is The press was saying that Koenecke was low-key, generating little sports writer ink. He was professional during games, quiet in the clubhouse, and a colorless family man away from the diamond. And that's interesting because of what we're going to talk about shortly here. All right, Michael, why don't you get I have a little cartoon here that this is a really cool little thing here. Do you have that cartoon of him for his success? Do you have that one handy? There you go. So look at that. Look at this. Was railroaded off the Northwestern line, comes out of Eclipse to shine resplendently. They say, you can't become a star overnight. It only took him to he was like 34 years old, I love little like cartoons like this. So he had all that success. So what do you do? What happens if you go back to I think was he in Friendship, Wisconsin, Cowboy Jack? Was that where he was from?
Yes, sir.
What happens if a guy who made success on a grand scale comes back to Friendship? He is a local hero, Michael Mondragon. So he ended up making the rounds on the local banquet circuit. He was getting steak and potato testimonial dinners, drinks on the house from coast to coast.
Sponsor dinners, dude. Sponsor dinners.
He was living the life, let me tell you. And the Dodgers, meanwhile, were really excited about this guy. And they had their publicity book for 1935 said, quote, I should read it more sexually than this. Look at this. Those magnificent shoulder muscles that are part of Len Koenecke's physical development were not acquired on the ball field. Rather, he fashioned them during months of backbreaking work as a fireman on the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. All right.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. The Dodgers were hyping him up, brother. But something happened, Cowboy Jack. What happens if you're on the road, partying it up? You can be ready for some baseball.
Yeah, you're probably not hitting the Stairmaster. You're probably packing on a few LBs, dude. I mean,
yeah, you show up overweight. And one thing I love there, it said he had a recurrence of the foot miseries that had plagued him previously that set back his conditioning. Meanwhile, we couldn't find any record of him ever having foot injuries previously. We just figure we mentioned he wasn't very limber, in a tight space all those years working on the train. Maybe he messed up his legs. Who knows? All right. So, and also apparently he was also dealing with a shoulder injury, which affected his fielding, which apparently we couldn't find out what caused that or what out with that. So they did all that shoveling, So, you know what? This guy's already, how old did I say he was? He's born in 1904. So he's like 30 years old. 30 years old. You know what that could be considered in my world? Damaged goods. All right. Your damaged goods, your has been. But he was young and MLB experience, but he was an old timer when it comes to playing baseball at that age. Say it like that. So he didn't do very well. Casey Stengel is very disappointed in him. And here's where the fun part is. Also off the field, I found a source that found him to be known for being a heavy drinker and belligerent. He also routinely violated curfew, which caused heat with the coaching staff. And it's interesting, too, because when it was time to #do the research, that the Saber article I read said that he wasn't known as a drinker. So
there's conflicting reports all throughout this guy's life.
Yeah, but you know what? This is a thing, though. Honestly, they were really kayfabing the players' habits to the press back in those days, or give the press and team were also kayfabing his drinking, as that would be standard fare in 1935. Like all the stuff Babe Ruth was up to was, for players like that, a lot of frolicking on the road, a lot of drinking, having a good time. That would be hidden to the general public for sure. And another fun thing I was thinking about this, because I was around in the 1930s, was if you're talking about his drinking. Apparently he was just excess drinker for all this time, is that prohibition was just repealed in the end of 1933, ironically enough. So who knows if it's legal now and he started hitting it harder, or if he was, like me, going to speakeasies all those years, But regardless, unfortunately, he wasn't doing well. His batting average is down. His power numbers were down. His fielding regressed. He made 8 errors in 86 games. As I told you, he made 2 the entire 1934 season. So the Dodgers had no chance of making the playoffs, and Stengel was like, I got to do something. So there was September 15th, 1935. Casey sent Koenecke to the plate as a 9th-inning pinch hitter against Chicago Cubs right-hander Bill Lee, not Bill Spaceman Lee, Michael Mondragon. Bill Lee's not even that old. He grounded out. After the 6-3 loss, the Dodgers headed for St. Louis to begin a series against the Cardinals. This would be the end of Len Koenecke's baseball career. So, Jack, now I just got to lob you this softball. Oh, he's opening one up.
September 16th, 1935, manager Casey Stengel decided to bring in some younger talent in an attempt to dig the bums from Brooklyn out of their 27th place hole that his unmatched managerial prowess had dug. Len Koenecke had just arrived in St. Louis for the 5-game series, and he was informed by Stengel that he, along with pitchers Les Munns and Bob Barr, would be paid out the remainder of the season and sent home early. This was the beginning of Len Koenecke's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Koenecke called his wife Gladys at their apartment in Brooklyn and let her know that he was on the way home, and he even took time to write a postcard to his daughter. Is she 5 years old? Is she 2 years old? We don't know. But the postcard said, "Hurrah, I'll be with you tomorrow." He took a cab with Munns and Barr to the St. Louis airport to catch an American Airlines flight that would take them back home to New York. On the way to the airport, the 3 ball players, uncertain of their future in baseball, made a fateful decision to pick up a bottle or 2 or 3 or 4 of whiskey to drown their sorrows on the journey home. The 3 pink-slipped ball players were to fly on a 14-seat Boeing Model 247, which we have an example right here. This was luxury air travel in 1935. It is a non-pressurized cabin, so it's freezing cold in there. You had to bundle up. It can't fly at cruising speed, so it's a turbulent ride, and any movement in that cabin is going to send that plane just moving around. This is air travel in 1935.
I would know.
So they are going to fly from St. Louis to Chicago to refuel, from Chicago to Detroit to refuel, then finally from Detroit to New York City. Now, why the Dodgers organization made the decision to fly the players, which at the time when a plane ticket could cost half the amount of just buying a new car, a whole ass new car. And not send them via train, which remains a mystery to anybody that's ever looked into the incident. There's nobody, you can't find out who made that decision. Little fiscally irresponsible. So the boys partied on the way to Chicago, made it to Chicago, no problem, no problem. The plane got refueled. And that's when the brown liquor took control. Sauced up and feeling rowdy, Koenecke started a fight with a fellow passenger. This isn't like modern day air travel, as I mentioned, so he's moving around in this cabin and the plane is just going nuts. Stewardess comes in to intervene, get him to calm down, and he knocks the good sister to the ground. So all the passengers gang up on this guy, pull him into a chair, and tie him to the chair. The co-pilot has to come out of the cabin and physically sit on him for the remainder of the flight to get him to calm down.
Now, wait a minute, Jack. Len Koenecke, as I said earlier, is 5'11", 200 pounds. You're telling me he's not going to be able to bust out of that and a guy's going to sit on him?
Dude, that's why they also tied him to the seat. They lashed him to the seat and the guy had to sit on him. He's going incredible Hulk mode.
But who's this guy? Well, he's get like a guy like, well, a mini. I mean, come on.
No. I forgot to mention the co-pilot was also a former university football player.
Oh,
so
okay.
he's a big beefy bro, man.
He has to break out of the rope. He's got to break out of the rope like Houdini, and then he has to go get this guy off his lap. All right.
Exactly. So he passes out. They get to Detroit, Michigan, and he's out like a light. So Munns and Barr drag him into the airport, throw him up on a bench, and they just leave him there. They leave his drunken carcass right there, and they catch their next flight home, which is not a very brotherly move, guys. We all know the rule of the road. When you got a gimmicked up brother, we all go home or nobody goes home.
Wait a minute. You're telling me this guy did this, and they just go over there.
Dude, there's no TSA. There's no. The air travel was mighty different back then. You could just disappear on flights.
Yeah, because you know what? I mean, geez, you're telling me so DB Cooper could just rob the plane and just jump out and you would be able to get away with it? Come on.
Right. You would know, DB. I mean, Kevin.
I would put him in the cage in the back here.
All right. So guys, so far this is a wild story, but this is the part of the story where as we like it, it gets hazy, it gets real, and it gets real hazy. One of the American Airlines employees found Koenecke passed out, reaches in his pocket, finds his paper ticket, and tears it up, ensuring that he couldn't board another flight. So this dude wakes up. He's on the bad side of a whiskey drunk mountain. He's marooned in Detroit. And let me tell you, I've been stranded in a Mexican border town, Guam, and even a South Korean prison cell. And I would choose being stuck in any one of those three than Detroit freaking Michigan in 1935. So Len's sitting on a bench. He's drunk. He's dejected. He just got fired. He's probably panicking about not only how is he going to get home to his wife and daughter, but what's he going to do for work? He just got pink slipped, brother. So a dude walks in from the tarmac, and I can only imagine it's like that when you open the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, that glowing light, right? Dude's wearing like a pilot's outfit. He's got the leather bomber jacket on. So Len assumes correctly that the man was a pilot. The guy's name is William Mulqueeney, and he owned a Stinson Detroiter, which is a single-engine monoplane about the size of a modern-day SUV. It's a six-seater, including the pilot and co-pilot. So he asked him about chartering his plane to take him back to New York. Mulqueeney's price to fly to New York City was $175, which is $3,802 in today's money. The average American salary in 1935 was $471 a year. And ball players weren't pulling down that Aaron Judge money at this time. So Len and Mulqueeney negotiated it down to $60, which is $1,300 in today's money, to fly as far as Buffalo, New York. Mind you that you can now book a direct flight from Detroit to Buffalo for $278 right now.
Hey, Jack, Michael, can I say something? So you know what I can say right now? Hurrah! I'll be home tomorrow.
Hurrah, I'll be home tomorrow. So Michael Mondragon, Kevin Lyon, this is when the real plane ride from hell began.
Hey, can I please do it properly? The plane ride from hell.
So in a stroke of brilliance, Mulqueeney asks his friend Irwin Davis to tag along. Davis was known as the human bat for his daredevil act of jumping out of planes with a batwing shaped parachute. Wow. Real popular in the Midwest.
Is that DB Cooper? That might be DB Cooper,
dude. So these dudes are brothers. He says, "Hey, I gotta fly this guy. Why don't you come with me for company, or maybe if I get tired?" So Davis sits in the back of the plane, and Koenecke sits in the co-pilot seat. Mulqueeney, pilot seat, of course. Fly off into the night. Neither one of these guys know what's in store. So Koenecke was quiet and almost despondent for the first few minutes of the flight. No doubt contemplating his future, but then it's like a switch flipped. He began shoulder checking Mulqueeney and urging the pilot to do some barrel rolls. Mulqueeney and Davis tried to calm down this hulking monster with promises of more whiskey when they landed in Buffalo, but nothing. They couldn't talk him down off the ledge. He would just get more and more and more agitated. So he's out of his mind, and now he's completely unmanageable. So he starts grabbing for the controls of the plane. This is life and death situation now. Like, this is real. Just to recap, drunk Incredible Hulk trying to crash the plane that you're flying. Okay. Not good.
So the human, what are you gonna do? Did the human bat try to help?
So the human bat finally just grabs him and pulls him to the back, and they start fighting, rolling around, fighting, and he's biting him. He's biting the human bat on the arm. They're hitting. Wait!
Isn't it supposed to be the human bat doing the biting? Come on.
Right, dude. Right. So Mulqueeney's like, man, I got to end this. And he looks around, and
Well, they're hitting him too, right?
Right. They're punching. They're fighting. There's just no phasing this guy.
What I know during the scuffle is that they're literally bashing into him because this is such a small space. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It'd be like Michael driving a car and you and me fighting in the back seat.
Correct. Yeah. No. It's it's all over the place. So Mulqueeny thinks it's going down, dude. This is life or death. So he looks around and he grabs the first object that he can find, which was a fire extinguisher, and he swings behind him to try to hit Koenecke. He actually ends up hitting the human bat first. So he's desperate at this point. He leaves the controls and he started hitting Len Koenecke in the head, reminiscent almost of Mighty Casey at the bat. He hit his head no less than 10 times until the man stopped moving. So then he runs back up, gets control of the plane, and he brings it down for a landing at the first opportunity he has, which happened to be the Long Branch racetrack in a suburb of Toronto, Canada. So a plane almost crashing and having to perform an emergency landing on a racetrack was not a common sight in that time in rural Canada, and it drew the attention of the local police. When they arrived at the plane, they opened the door and they found the two shell-shocked pilots and a very motionless, very dead Len Koenecke lying in a pool of his own blood. Len would never make it home to see his wife and daughter. It doesn't end there, boys. Willie Mac Mulqueeny and the human bat Erwin Davis were immediately charged with manslaughter and taken into custody by the Toronto police. The men stayed in a Canadian jail eating poutine and Saskatoon berries while the police investigated the scene. Just to give you an idea of what happened to Mr. Koenecke's head, the Toronto investigator showed the fire extinguisher to William Mulqueeny, and he reacted by saying, "Surely it wasn't pounded into that awful shape by me hitting him in the head. I simply didn't know what I was doing. It's too horrible to think of. I want to forget it all." The case was then brought before a local jury for a preliminary hearing 3 days after the incident, and it took the jury 12 minutes of deliberation to dismiss the charges against Willie Mac Mulqueeny and the human bat Erwin Davis, allowing them to cross the border and get back home.
And he makes it sound so simple, but it's not that simple because you have an American plane landing in Canada with 3 American citizens, and people are like, what do we do here? You know, just trying to figure this out. And I did hear the pilot more or less say along the lines like, I wish I could take those blows back. But at the same time, I said, well, it's either 1 or 3 of us.
Right.
You know what I mean? What's going to survive?
Absolutely.
Make it, go down in this situation. I guess I can talk a little bit about the aftermath. So
yeah, tell me about Casey Stengel.
So, Casey Stengel, was responsible for sending him off and doing all this. So it was a quote from Casey Stengel, which you'll see what I mean in a minute here. Casey told the press, quote, "I deeply regret Koenecke's death and can't explain his actions. For when he left yesterday, he seemed all right and in good spirits." That was reported in the New York Herald Tribune and Washington Evening Star, September 18th, 1935, and elsewhere. Here's where it gets hazy. Decades later, a Dodgers historian maintained that Stengel had been too distraught to handle press inquiries. Lest Stengel be perceived as indifferent to the tragedy, club officials persuaded Roscoe McGowan, again, probably not a real name, of the New York Times to call the Associated Press, impersonate Stengel's gravelly voice, and issue appropriate expressions of grief.
Wow.
The remarks went out over the wires and no one was the wiser. How about that?
Wow.
But meanwhile, though, who do you think else is going to be angry about this? The Dodger players. So the Dodgers, they wore an armband in honor of Len the next day. But man, can you imagine the heat on Casey from the players?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let this guy go, and now he's dead, and he has a wife and a kid, et cetera, et cetera. And that definitely probably affected his time with the Dodgers. Like I said, they had a losing record that year. I think this year, just like the season before. And then after the next season, again, they didn't do well at all. And then they let him go, and then Casey Stengel's never heard from him again, right?
He hung around just like all the bad ones do.
He hung around. Oh, come on now. He hung around for like about another 30 years as the manager, Hall of Famer, all-time great manager. But what an interesting beginning to his career.
Yeah.
So there's your Len Koenecke story. But there's something we do here at Hazy History to conclude. We have what is called the Deplorable Baseball Bum of the Month, and that is the term of Mr. Cowboy Jack Durango. So tell us, Jack, who is it?
Boys and girls, proud members of the Bruniverse, time for the Deplorable Baseball Bum of the Month, which is none other than, drum roll please, whiskey. We don't know what type or what brand. This story serves as a testament that we should all be drinking craft beer instead of that brown liquor.
And can I just say to finish up, hurrah.
Cheers indeed. Oh my gosh. Wow. That was a deep, deep dive into some craziness. And that was his rookie year as a manager. That all happened?
At 34. 34 was his rookie year.
Wow.
And then had his career year. And then the next year, he had to deal with that tragedy.
I've never heard of that, even in his career at all. That's amazing. What an amazing dive, guys. What a great job you guys did with that. That is fantastic. Yes. And what a sordid tale indeed. Absolutely outstanding. Guys, you must be winded now. You're absolutely right. What is it? Liquor is quicker. Whiskey is whiskey for.
And here's another funny thing, though. Mr. Stengel was a mere 44 years old in 1934, or 45 when this thing happened. Think about that. So, like I said, never young. He became a manager at the age of 43.
Yeah, for real.
the old professor, for a good reason.
Yeah, old professor. Oh boy. Yeah, he might have had some other names before that, but professor is what they landed on. Wow, that's crazy.
Yes. And Michael, let me just give a little fun fact there too about this. This incident was actually, they did a spot in the show Archer. Are you aware of the show Archer?
Sure.
So there's an episode of Archer, I think it's called Smuggler's Blues, where they're flying. There's a 3-seater. And Archer tries to grab control of the plane, and the guy behind him grabs the fire extinguisher and knocks him out with it, and hits it with it. And the next scene is they're sitting in his car, and he goes, but Archer says to the guys, "Oh, just so you know, that's exactly how Len Koenecke died."
Wow, they actually said that. That's hilarious.
Len Koenecke's name, which I couldn't believe that.
No one would get that.
Yeah, I know.
I'm into baseball, and I don't even know that. That's incredible. Oh my God, I love all that deep dive.